Hi, it's Kamon Reynolds, and hope you all are doing well. It is a rainy day here in Middle Tennessee, a little bit of sun peeking out periodically. We have a lot to talk about, though, particularly what are we doing in August? What do we need to be looking for? Variables and treatment, and also some other things that are happening. So, I've actually got some Apagard here. It's one of the tubs that we're using, and I will show you a little bit about that here in the near future. Hey, Don Bearden. Hey, Lawson Creek Apiary and the Beehive Homestead and Castle Hives, Brian. So, speaking of Don Bearden, since he already popped in, I've got a pound of his honey and it is good stuff. Jimmy approves. However, Jimmy likes every honey. So, it's kind of, it's like Mikey. He'll eat anything. But it is really good Alabama honey. Editing a video on an OAV as you speak, huh, Brian? Cool, cool. All right, everyone's piling in. Awesome. So, a lot of stuff going on right now. We just finally got around to updating the website on a few things on the Hive Life conference, and the vendors are piling in. We're pushing upwards to 3 dozen that have already committed to coming to the conference, and we just released it at 10 p.m. last night, and it's a weekend. So, that's exciting. Finally got that done. So if you know of someone who's interested in vending, or if you are, that is now available. I'm going to leave a link for that here. And we've got it updated. I almost said I did, to where you can see some of the speaker bios now for the conference. And I just talked to David Burns. He has a YouTube channel and sounds like he will be coming to the conference as well. I had a nice chat with him this Sunday afternoon, and really excited to meeting him in person for the first time at the Hive Life conference. So, getting to the questions. All right, scroll back up, scroll back up. All right, so Tennessee Tim is doing the 3 T's in August: testing, treating, and trapping. All right. Speaking of which, gosh, where are those things? Man, I don't think I brought them in here. I'll do that in a near video upcoming. All right. Hey, Cayman, about to start my second round of Apagard. How long before I can put my supers on for fall flow after treatment? According to the directions, which I've got them right here, restrictions, remove surplus supers. Hmm. I believe, if I remember correctly, within 24 hours of when they remove the last of the crystals, or you pull them out. So if you go in there and there's no crystals left on the card or whatever, or the tray, depending on what you purchased, 24 hours later, you can put those supers on. And I wouldn't really be too concerned about it getting into the comb. It really doesn't stay in the comb. I've had it before where there's some deep boxes that had definitely been treated, and I've treated with this product a lot. Brood combs that have experienced this for multiple years back to back have no scent of thiamol whatsoever. But if you did it when there was actually honey in the comb, I think that would hold it and absorb it. But yeah, 24 hours should be good. I wanted to do Apagard, but Temps didn't allow it. Did Apavard July 1st. We'll test again after and use Apagard in the fall if needed. That's the way to do it, Lawson's Creek. Know what's going on and then have a backup plan. And when you don't need it, well, then you know. And if you do, then you don't get caught with your pants down. All right. So Bub says Sweden is here, awake and smiling. So thanks for tuning in all the way from Sweden. And so I left that link. Yeah, it goes directly to the website. Where is Laurel? Laurel's actually under the weather today. She's not feeling super hot. So I'd say she's relaxing, but she has to take care of, she's relaxing as much as someone can who has to deal with a crazy beekeeping husband like me and 2 of his offspring. So, yeah, sort of relaxing. Kamon, I treated a 5-frame nuke hives with Apavar about 2 weeks ago. They need to go into a bigger box. Would you add more Apavar to the hives once they go into bigger boxes? Thank you. Hey, Will, that's a good question. 2 strips is supposed to be enough for a 10-frame box. So what I would do is if you have 2 strips already in that 5-frame nuke, then you're good. If you don't, if you only have 1, then yes, I would go ahead and add 1. On Apavar, I would add a little bit more, if it's just the 1 strip, but 2 strips should be good enough for a colony that size, Will. Zach Heinzelman, the man, the myth, the legend. That's what I said about Michael Palmer the other day, and that got a lot of thumbs up. And people were like, "Who's this Kamon Reynolds guy?" And I was like, whatever." Now it was great. Michael and I have been talking back and forth and trying to convince him to come to the Hive Life conference. It's. I think I got him this close, this close. He was up at EAS this last week, so if he'll go to EAS, maybe he'll come to ours. Hey, Bub, thank you. I think YouTube definitely has some perks, and YouTube is getting a lot better for beekeeping information. James, do you recommend Formic Pro? That's his question. So, yes, and you have to watch it, though. Use it in the appropriate temperatures. Always make sure that you observe all the rules that they give you for ventilation. You need to have some headspace. So, if you have the top parts of your frames and then you have your lid up top, you need to make sure that you put on an empty box or a shim, allow some airflow above so that they can get a nice circulation in there, and it helps spread the formic acid around, and just use it within temperatures. There are professionals that use it, very large operations. It's just a lot more sensitive than I'd like, and with the heavy, humid air we have here, plus the summer heat. If I was going to use formic, I would use it in early spring to cut the needs right out from underneath the mites early on, and then probably use something in between that, and then maybe use formic again later in the year. A lot of it depends on your season. How many mites are you making? Are you in Florida? Are you in Wisconsin? So Formic is definitely a valuable tool for mite control, but it has to be used appropriately. It's if everything's going right, it works great. If it's not, then it could be really rough on your bees. Okay. Oh, doggone it, jumped again. Hmm. Wow. Okay. So we are so far behind the southern states. It's crazy. We're going to be pulling honey super late next week. Yeah. Well, you guys not only are further north, but then on top of that, if I remember correctly, you had a cooler spring and it just winter lingered around for a while. Yeah, that's the right one. Thank you, Laurel. What about what temperatures are good for Apagard? So, for best results, do not use this product when the maximum daily temperature is lower than 60 degrees Fahrenheit. A lot of times we talk about the how hot it should be, but you definitely don't need to be using it when it's too cool either, or it just won't off gas properly. Do It says also when the colony activity is very low, do not use the product when the maximum daily temperature is above 105. Now, that is a pretty big gap in there. It says don't store above 86 degrees. That's something I highly recommend. Make sure you store this stuff in a room temperature area, consistent temperatures. Otherwise, the uh, thymol will separate from the gel that it's in. Now, personally, if it's above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, I usually don't give them the full 50-gram dose. So let's go ahead and do that while we're talking about Apagard. I'm going to pop this open and try not to get it on my fingers. Ah. Woo, yeah, sinuses are cleared. So you can see it's this gel right here. This is the lid, of course. Laurel, I might need something to wash my hands. Now, you can see all of that gel product, and it's kind of like soft jello. And that's really good. You want to, whenever you're done with it, especially if you take it outside with you and it gets warm, stir it up and then get it cool again. I've got a syringe right here to dose it. Now, for those of you who are like, I mean, I don't need a tub that big. You can get it in tins. You can also get it, I've seen it in like what it look like large ketchup packets. And you can just, I believe they're 50-gram doses in both of those sizes. However, if it's above 90 degrees and real humid, then I want to drop it down to 30 milliliters. So we've got this. Oh, that might help. And we just got the dosage right there. So instead of giving the colony this much, I would give them 30. Can't hardly see because of the lighting. There we go. And if it's maybe a little bit on the small side, then maybe you could go 25. This is where it's so valuable. Yeah, if you could just set this down right here, Laurel. Thank you so much. You are awesome. You are awesome. But you just take this, stick it down in the tub, and suck it on up. And it comes with cards when you purchase this stuff. But I just get a card like this if I don't have enough. Then you just pour it right there. The main thing is you want the bees to get plenty of access to this card. If they're not grabbing it and tracking it throughout the colony, then it's not killing mites as good as it needs to. If it just sits up there and off gases, you're not getting near the kill that you would if the bees actually get it on them and track it through the colony. So it's important to always make sure the bees have plenty of room to access it. And stronger colonies deal with this better than weaker colonies. As far as ventilation goes and all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't want to have a really powerful colony with only like a 1-inch entrance with this on. They'll all beard. They need to be able to, ventilate the colony. So I usually have about a 6-inch entrance when I use this. And you're not supposed to feed with it according to this. However, I have done that multiple times and I've never had any issues. And so has Bob Benny. And so do some other commercial guys that I know because it's just way more efficient to feed and treat at the same time. But legally, according to the label, you don't do that. Commercial beekeepers are really bad about listening to other people. I did not just say that. Thanks for the soap water, Laurel. All right, so washing my hands. This stuff won't burn you really bad on regular skin contact. It's not good for your skin to get a bunch of it on there. If you have an open cut or you get it near your eyes or something like that, yeah, it will feel good. Ooh, this room, I mean, we are on a time all high right now. So I was not sure if I would have the energy to do this live chat tonight, and I feel fantastic. Totally awake. All right, all jokes aside, sorry about all the shaking. 30 grams is a great dose for a good strong colony if it's 90 degrees or above. And then 1 week apart, 30 grams, 30 grams, 30 grams. I know some guys that do 25, 25, 25, and 25. I suggest doing alcohol washes beforehand. Like, oh man, we have a 2% infestation. Let's do this and then follow up. And then now, especially if you do it a couple years back to back, it really gives you a good idea what to expect in your area with your bees. And now you've dialed in your treatment program, which is the best thing you can do. All right, getting back to other questions. Okay. Are you still coming to Fairmont, West Virginia in September? Yes, I am. I will be in West Virginia in September. I will also be in Arkansas in September and Alabama. It's going to be the busiest month of the year. I don't have a lot of spots really left for 2022 to speak. But if anyone's bee club, whether it's Zoom or in person, if anyone wants to get me to do something like that, It's a possibility when it's not honey flow time of the year, and I can be reached at tennesseesbees@gmail.com. Well, do you mind leaving that link for me? Tennesseesbees at gmail.com. Leave that for me. Thank you. Kamon rocket fuel update. So not I haven't used it long enough to be able to determine um, how good it is. And I think it's a good product. I think it's going to be a good thing, especially I'm excited to see how it works with bees coming out of winter too. But I'm not definitely at the stage where I can say this stuff is the best. Yeah. So Laurel's leaving that email down below if anyone needs their bee club, and that's those are the live meetings. I'm also doing several. It's just a Zoom meeting, so if you want me to zoom in and give an hour presentation or something, I can do that very easily. Can frames that have been treated with Apavar or Apagard also be used later for honey frames as far as edibility goes? Technically, Apagard can. You're really not supposed to with Apavar. The difference between the two is Apagard is a whole lot cleaner, very natural. The Apavar is a synthetic amatraz, and then it breaks down into other type of carcinogens. And I'm sure it can be eaten, but I really wouldn't like to eat honey from frames that I knew had Apavar in them. Now, Apagard, I wouldn't care a bit, and it's perfectly normal with Apagard. At least in my book, to you're really not supposed to treat when the honey's in there. But if I was to treat and I had some that were being drawn during that time, I would totally use them the next year. Totally. But I went with Apavar. Hmm. Did 6 washes the other day, 10, 4, 1, 1, 1, 1. So overall, not too bad. And that's a great indicator right there of what I'm going to talk a little bit about tonight, of what you could see this time of the year. Half, three quarters, 80% of your bee yard could be in a pretty good shape where you're washing really low counts. So washing ones is very low. That's not even half a percent infestation. That means there's only one mite for every 300 bees, roughly. So that's a good ratio right there. But the one that has four, that means there's about 1.3 mites per every 100 bees. And then the 10 is the problem, and that's the thing that we've got to watch out for, and we don't really know until we do an alcohol wash or something like that, because that 10 colony, if it gets treated like the rest of them, you do Apagard, let's say, on all of those, likely that Apagard is going to take that 4 and all those ones right down to where they need to be, and just be great for the rest of the year. That 10, though, if it gets you an 80% reduction, you still have 2 mites in there. By the end of the month, it could be back to 1%. Then September, 21 days into that, 2%, 4%. And especially if you're in the South, a lot of this depends on where you're at. And when your bees shut down, especially in the deep South, that colony could still crash and potentially infest the rest of your bees again. So knowing what's going on is really important. Came and I left a full super of honey on my hives for the bees. Can I still treat for mites? You can. Really, it's just recommended when there's honey in there is formic acid. Oxalic acid is supposed to be available to use in the near future once they change the label on apabioxol. However, a lot of beekeepers don't even use that. Um, so there are things that you can do. I think I still got a little bit of thymol on me. Oh well. That's why I wear gloves when I use thymol. Pretty much any of these products, oxalic acid, thymol, formic. Definitely wear a respirator with some of those as well. But you can treat with that super on, but I wouldn't want to do something like Apavar or a synthetic. All right. So Wade Barnes says he sees goldenrod. I have seen goldenrod too, just the early stages, and I just saying this is not a sign to stop feeding and to stop checking your hives for feed. Early goldenrod typically does little to nothing. That is a general statement for my area and what I know, and what a lot of guys I know in this region tell me, who even have more experience than I do by like my lifetime's worth of experience. I mean, so early goldenrod to me, I usually don't see a lot of bees on it. I'm still excited to see it because I know what's coming, but just keep eyeballing those colonies and making sure they're where they're at. But it won't be too long in the so we got two types of goldenrod. I mean, there's several different varieties, but the ones that I look for is we have the blooms that kind of go horizontal, and they don't really do as much. And then we have the ones up here that are more vertical bloomers, and I see my bees all over those things. And that's always when I have the nectar coming in from goldenrod, if there is any nectar. So Tritone WR says, where would you put the Apagard tray in double nukes like Palmer's? If possible, I would make a little shim for them and put a light dose, and make sure you have that little bit of a gap up top, and also be sure that you don't apply too much. So for a 5 frame nuke, no more than 25 grams. All right. Getting back to, I got to say a big thank you to Noah Gaynor. Thank you very much again for donating. So Noah says, I'm going to do a 50 milliliter dose of Apagard. How long should I wait before I put supers on to catch the fall flow? So I'd get that treatment on as soon as possible. And then as soon as the card is cleared. So if you look at the instructions, it says the 50 milliliter dose, 14 days, and then you come back and reapply it again. However, the bees, especially on a strong colony, will get rid of it way faster than that time period. So if I come on that second round of it, or maybe you're only doing one, whatever you feel like you need for your bees, come back 7 days later. If that card is cleared and there's no gel on it and the hive doesn't smell like thymol, throw super on. A strong colony will clear it out very quickly. But you should be able to do it within about 24 hours. And I've got the instructional manual that came with it, but I remember reading that and going, wow, 24 hours. It's around here somewhere. I just had it. By the way, actually, the company that makes Apagard signed up to come to our conference um, today. So that is really cool. I've actually met this guy before, and they actually make a lot of different products that I did not realize that they did. Some of them I think are only approved in Europe, but it is still very interesting. Cayman, your thoughts on oxalic acid extended release? Here in Vermont, we get to try it. So we are trying it as well. And I don't have a massive opinion on it right now. I've got a guess that it's not going to be, as of right now, a treatment we can depend on to really knock mites back tremendously. But if you have a 1% or half a percent infestation, I think it's really good at keeping that low, maybe holding the line at 1% for multiple months. Or if it does let the mites grow, just very little, which is very valuable in of itself. Instead of the mites, like if you put it on when they were 1% and it's able to hold the line, not really give you a knockback, but just hold the line. If it could do that for 2 months, which some of the research is showing that in some cases it has been able to do that, 2 months without that treatment, you could be talking a 4% infestation. So keeping that maybe around 1.5%, that's huge. Then you could come back with Apagard and clear that up very easily. And so I think it's a tool that could be a valuable one in the future. This is recorded, Deborah. Thanks for asking and thanks for being here. Hot as heck here in Massachusetts. It's we know exactly what that's like. It is jump in the creek weather. Okay, let's see here. Just trying to catch up. Yeah, kind of like Vicks Vapor Rub for bees. Yes, exactly. Hey, everyone, first year I didn't do the control hives and no neighbors around my test yard. I can't find one Varroa. It's all treated with brood break cages and glycerin in early June. That's really cool, Danny. You've got a system going right there, and that's really the main thing. There's so much variables with feeding and treating and requeening and honey flows in this business. I can give you general knowledge, great queens, dead mites, and good nutrition, but to dial it in your sideline or operation to a high level, that's really something you have to do for yourself. Find out what you need for your circumstance. Hmm. Cayman, do you feed syrup or sugar water during Apogard treatment? Yes. Yes, I do. Not always, but if I feel like I need to, then I totally do. I just extracted 400 pounds of honey last week using bucket filters. They take way too long to filter. I remember those days, nuts and bolts beekeeping. We need to probably do a video on that and how to make that a little bit better. There's a lot of little pieces of equipment that really need to be available for sideline operations that just aren't there that would make stuff like that so much easier than it is. Do you recommend using drone comb for hobby beekeepers for my control? Does that really only work in spring and summer because the queen stops laying drones in the fall? It depends a little bit on where you're at, but by and large, especially in this region, we don't see a lot of drones this time of the year. They do exist, but a fraction of what there was in late April, May, and June and early July. August, drone population's really going down. So it's more of an early spring thing, and it's one of those dealios. If you actually do it, yes, it does chip away at the mites and slows down future buildup. By itself, I don't think it's close to enough. But the problem is if you miss that and you something happens, you get a cold or you get called off somewhere for work and you miss that, now you've also produced more mites by raising more drones. So it totally can be something that's utilized, and I think anyone that's willing to do it should do it, but in conjunction with other things. All the guys that I know, like I was talking to a guy with 10,000 hives the other day, and talking to him about mite control, and they're just chipping away at them all throughout the year. The mites never get a chance to even get close to 2% infestation rates, which would be, gosh, six mites. Oh gosh, I guess that thymol wasn't quite strong enough. So 1% would be three, yeah, three mites. So it'd be six mites in an alcohol wash. So that'd be two mites per 100 bees, which is still fairly low. You definitely want to go into winter with that, but they're just constantly chipping away at them. It's a part of their operation. Cayman, I have dragonflies eating my bees today. What can I do? And will they damage the colony? They do chip away at the percentages, and it's a pain in the rear end. The only thing I know to do about them is to, first of all, if you live in a really rural area, you can shoot them with a shotgun. Um, no, seriously, you can actually get a tennis racket and that gets them real good. However, it's not very cost effective for your time. I really have never heard about how beekeepers deal with them if they become a major problem, but probably just chipping away at the bees. And as long as you got a good laying queen and everything's the way it should be in the colony, the bees should be fine. What do you think of the bee scanning app to measure mites? I find it monstrously hard to believe that that thing is accurate. First of all, most everything else isn't very accurate. And now we're having a scanning app that's going to be able to tell us how many mites we have and be pretty accurate. I don't trust sticky board readings. Some people do. The more I learn about sticky board readings, the less I trust them. And the bee scanning app, unless you're able to get that scanner to look up underneath the abdomen of the bee where most of the mites are, I really just think it's a waste of my time. I would love to see more on it though. Cayman, hey, I'm wanting to requeen a poorly laying queen. Once I kill her, can I place my new queen in a deep box above the old hive with a screened inner cover to protect her for a couple days? Screened inner cover. So you could, as long as she has some bees with her. She's a very social insect. So are you talking like a double screened inner cover? I'm not 100% sure what you mean by, I guess, screened inner cover. As long as she has some bees with her, that would work good. But if she's just in a cage with a couple of attendants, she needs to go down where the brood was because any nurse bees need to be getting around her and taking care of her and also touching her and getting mandibular pheromone from the queen. Now you can get a push in cage and wait, I think I got one. Yep. So you can just get a number 8. You can purchase these well, but you get number 8 hardware cloth and you just push this down into your combs and put the queen carefully down in there and she can Laurel made these by the way. Um, and she'll lay and that's great. It protects her. You can put this over some emerging brood from the other queen. And so as they're emerging out, they're accepting her and helping her maintain those cells in there. And since she's a laying queen, whenever you remove this, the acceptance rate is very, very good. Takes a little bit more time to do that, but it definitely works very well. Cayman, what do you think about breaking the queen's laying cycle with an in colony queen cage? It can be done. However, doing it really late in the year, it's hard to build your bees back up to a nice big cluster size. And so that's why this isn't really a one size fits all. And that's why you don't see a lot of people doing it, is because my flow's done in June, early June. And if So I'm in a dearth period. If I was going to do it, I would do it right then. Hurry, get the supers off, do a quick brood break, and do it then when you still have plenty of nutrition and plenty of bees and a big population and plenty of time to build up a nice cluster to go into winter. But the problem is a lot of northern beekeepers, they're making honey during that time. And then if you're in the south, doing it once is probably not enough. So you'd have to do something else anyways. So brood breaks definitely can work, but I think it's really hard to make it a one size fits all dealio. I've done it late in the season before, and I had a very difficult time getting the 13 colonies that I did it to build back up to be big, decent colonies for winter. I want to say thank you to Berserker's Bee Farm for supporting us and coming on tonight. Thank you very much, sir. Cornell has a graph of pre-winter mite load versus winter survival rate, something like more than 7% pre-winter certain death. I don't fully understand what that means, but I think I would really like to. Maybe, Thomas, if you find that, you can email that to me or leave a link here or something like that. I'm a total bee nerd and I do love learning about that kind of stuff. Cayman, what do you do to combat European hornets harassing your colonies? Traps is the best thing I can think of besides finding the nest and taking them out. European hornets, when they're really close to a hive, can really chip away at them. And this is the things that we face as beekeepers. So everything's glorious in spring, typically, not always, but typically. And throughout the entire season, yellow jackets, European hornets, dragonflies, robber flies, assassin bugs, ant populations, varroa mites, small hive beetles, everything is it starts off small, thank goodness, but then builds up throughout the season to where that all converges and reaches critical mass right when things are most important for our bees prepping for winter. And that's why, as beekeepers, more now than ever before, we have to really focus on August and September as very critical months to manage our bees' nutrition and mite loads, small hive beetle loads, and safeguard them from hornets and stuff like that. It can be difficult with some of these, like European hornets, but thankfully, you can put um, traps. There's traps out there for them and different things like that. Don't use anything really sugary because then it'll attract the bees. But a lot of times, if you use well, heck, there's some pheromones out there. But finding the nest and organically treating them with some kerosene really works well. Okay, not a double screen, just a thin screen so they can touch. I get you. I get you. That, yeah, that would work as long as she has enough bees to maintain that top box. That would work just fine. Hey, Brian. So, Cayman, I got that book, Honeybee Biology and Beekeeping by Dewey Karen and Larry Connor. Great book. It is. It's a college education in a book. It's not a cheap book, but I think it's worth every penny, especially to beekeepers who are really wanting to take their information to an advanced level. And it's also got a lot of good pictures and very easy to read. It's not one of those that you feel like you're actually having to do a college course and just glaze over. So I really like that book very much. Cayman, do you know if any of the Laura vaporizers that work with the front of an Apame, maybe even on the upper entrance of the hive body, the one with the wheel? Not really. The only thing that I know right now that'll work with an Apame hive is to hold the thing right outside of one of the entrances. Personally, I would do it from like maybe excuse me. Um, the problem is if you blow it through one of those holes, the disc holes, and it hits a frame, that most of the oxalic acid just condenses on that frame. Oxalic acid cools very quickly. Well, when it's in a vapor form. So he's got that tray for the back, but that's really all I can say. I really don't. I've got to figure something out. I know some guys they drill holes into their apame colonies, and then they'll put a metal rivet there of some kind, and that works. But I really don't fool with that right now. I really can't tell you. Ooh, thymol, baby. Cayman, what's the latest that you've grafted? I've grafted in August before, and I have had queens come back in September and do well. The problem is the percentages aren't really good, and you end up with queens that are duds because there's just not as many drones. And if you have high mite loads, the drones just aren't as good. The quality of the drones is not just the mite loads, but it's also nutrition based as well. And they hold back a lot from the drones later in the year. I just don't think it's worth my time raising queens that late. I like to stop in July personally, but it can totally be done in August. And I think the latest I've grafted is like the last week of August, and then yeah, I had queens coming back on mating flights in September. It just wasn't worth my time. Okay, going catching up with some questions. All right, I've got to say thank you to Godwin Honey. Thank you very much. It looks like you're down in Texas. We appreciate you guys. Everything's bigger down in Texas, so they say. Um, one of the buddies I was talking about that runs 10,000 colonies, he's in Texas, so his operation is definitely bigger than mine. Gosh, that is a lot of bees. Who makes the best clarifier? So that is an interesting question. First of all, because I've never tried all of them. Now I have a Cowan 60 frame size clarifier. I love that thing. Clarifiers are pretty simple though. So I think probably most of them are really good. The Maxent one that I've seen that Gus uses, Gus Mitchell on his YouTube channel, it's a good clarifier. It's a little too small for his operation, but your average beekeeper who's running under 100 hives should do well with it. And I had a Dadant clarifier for several years. I believe it was 20 gallons before I sold it, and that worked really good for me. It was a good clarifier. Thorn Manufacturing is in the process of designing their clarifier. And for those of you who have kind of followed along, Thorn now has multiple new items and has changed some things as well. So I know they just had a batch of like 6 extractors out for order and all that kind of stuff. So they're really a kicking butt. I'm excited because we'll get to see this year all those units. So I hope to see a clarifier from them and a clarifier from multiple other companies. And so I can get a better idea when you guys ask me these questions. But the Maxent and the Data are definitely good. And the Cowens are very good too. Just very, very expensive. I would probably go with the Dadant if I had to have one now. I know Thorn can make one, um, but he's got a lot of extractor orders right now. We just have to see. Um, the reason I say that over Maxent is Maxent's really struggling to get a product out right now. I just heard of an order that they fulfilled that the order was put in back in like November or December. So they're just so far behind on things. So if you need it now, Dadant would probably be the place to go. Okay. New Hampshire here pulled 100 pounds from all 4 of my hives, now in a dearth, throwing Formic Pro on in a week. What can I do for my 2 single deep nuke resource hives? So you can do a few odds and ends. You could use Apagar. You could use oxalic acid. When I was talking to Randy Oliver at HAS, we were talking about some of the issues that we don't really have a lot of clear cut guaranteed treatments, and we're still trying to figure even some of them how well they work. So if you do oxalic acid vapor, I would do like 7 rounds in 21 days. That's kind of what he was suggesting, is about 7 rounds. And we're all discovering that having more than 1 gram per box is recommended. So for a nuke, maybe 2 grams for a nucleus colony would be. That's what I do. It's a 2 gram dose for a nucleus colony, and seems to work really good. But you can use Apavar. You can use thiamol at low dosages for a nucleus colony if it's a strong nuke. Probably use around a 20-gram dose, maybe something like that, maybe 15. Do it multiple weeks apart. Formic would just be a little too strong for that, wouldn't it? That's the problem with some of these treatments, is then not only do you have the variables of the temperature, but then you have the variables in the size of the colony. Ooh, so much fun. Someone needs to invent the perfect treatment, and you'll get all kinds of free advertising and make millions, I promise. Okay. You can find the single wall older Kelly clarifiers cheap. You would think, Gus, that somebody would make some different styles of some of these items. I don't understand why we have such few options. Yeah, water jacketed ones are definitely nice. Tracy says, waiting for Thorn to come out with a smaller wax melter. Will it be ready for the conference? Hey, Tracy, I've heard that the 7 gallon size wax melter that's a double jacketed and a double valved, like my 24-gallon one, should be available. Well, the first one should be available sometime in the next month ish. So the plan is to totally have it done well before the conference, to have a clarifier there, a small melter, a large melter, honey bottling unit. They already are selling their 36 frame extractors. Seemed like there was another thing or two. Oh, they're on capping tank, which they're already selling those. So we're going to have a nice line, and we're just going to have all kinds of extractors and stuff. And you can save. I believe that Thorn was saying that there's going to be a discount as well. So it's going to add up pretty fast on the savings at our conference. Just want to say again, since I haven't said it for a while, I'm going to leave a link down here below. And this link is to the Hive Life Conference vendor sign up. So anyone that you know that wants to vend at the conference, or if you want to vend at the conference, that's the link down below. Also at the main page, we have the speaker bios updated, and we have soon to be announced 26 very excited kids. I say kids, teenagers, by and large, that are getting full rights to the conference. Thanks to many of you all who have donated in various ways to the youth program and several of the companies that made that possible. And the vendors and individuals donated $7,000 towards at the silent auction last year at the conference. But these 26 kids, I've been able to watch their YouTube videos, and some of the finest young beekeepers I've had the experience of getting to see. So I'm super excited. It's going to be a blast to see those kids there, and yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm used to dealing with people older than me in beekeeping. So the biggest issue I've had with this whole process is all the Mr. Reynoldses, Mr. Kamon. Don't like the sound of that. Oh wow, Kathleen. And winter strategy, supers or none. I don't overwinter with honey supers on. But then again, I don't have super long winters. Right now, I'm planning on most of my colonies going through a double deep or a single deep and having one deep worth of food. So right now, my colonies need to have at least 40 pounds of honey on them, which would be around the equivalent of a medium's worth of stored honey or stored sugar syrup. Colonies need to have plenty of weight to where those queens will just lay. And if you guys watched this morning's video, it was a massive difference. When we checked that colony back in June, that queen made one deep of honey. If I would have been more proactive last year and requeened it, I guarantee you I'd have gotten at least 2 deeps of honey out of that colony. So I got half the yield. And then the colony population was just nosediving in the dirt. They had plenty of bee bread, though. That's the only plus side, is because the queen wasn't laying hard. They were bringing in the same amount of pollen almost, but they were just storing it up because they weren't burning it up. And I split the colony in half, about 6 or 7 frames of bees up top, 6 or 7 below. Queen cell in each one. Thankfully, both came back. And now that with the pattern that was in the video today, those queens have all that bee bread, and they're just going to blow that hive up. And I bet you that colony will overwinter with as big of a cluster as this colony had when I requeened it. It's just going to be powerful. So ECP, that DeWalt vaporizer, will be at the conference too, and may or may not be on a little bit of a discount. So we will see. The vendors are making a lot of moves, and we're going to be working hard for them advertising, because they're working hard for us. Basically, anything under the sun that you want, we will have it. You're right, Pappy's Bees. It is great that the kids have respect and manners, and I would rather have them say Mr. Reynolds than, treat me like an idiot. So, like all of, some of you guys do. No, I'm just teasing. But Kamon, when will a list of the vendors attending the conference be released? So, as we are collecting them, there are some that are just going to go right up onto the website here in the next few days and start being released, and that'll be on that link that I sent. So we'll have, like, let's say, Premier Foundation, Thorn, Dadant, anybody. Some of the companies that we've worked with in the past are just going to go right on through. But I'm vetting several other ones because I'm trying to keep a lot of Chinese stuff out and a lot of inferior product. And also just we have a limit amount of space too. I'm still going to be able to get about 90 vendors in this place, so we have plenty of space. But due to demand, I'm pretty sure we're going to fill it, and I'll probably have to turn some people away. But as soon as I can, I will release it. And the vendors that are going to have the best deals will definitely be the ones that go towards the forefront of my attention. Okay. Would you prefer deer, Mr. Caveman? No, no, not really. All right, Cayman, since you have the biggest bee conference of the year, can you guarantee my flight from California to Tennessee won't be delayed or canceled? I can tell you that we're gonna be there short of me, killing over. Um, the conference will be there now. I can't promise what the air flights are gonna do. If I was the president of the United States, then I could maybe do a thing or two about it. Um, but that's a story for another time. I can promise you we'll be there, Todd. And if you show up, you'll have a good time. Hey, Pierce Beekeeping Equipment. I actually need to call you. I've got a product idea that I've got to run by you. So we'll be talking soon. And I did see where you signed up for the conference again this year, and super excited to see that. Cayman, do you know what your topic will be in September at the West Virginia Bee Conference as the keynote speaker? I've got that written down in the email and on my planner, but I can't tell you off the top of my head. Um, Usually, I don't plan like work on that stuff too far out because if I do it this far in advance, it doesn't seem to do much. So usually about a week to 10 days before, I do a dry run all the way through it, and then I'll tweak it specifically for that conference and add new things I feel like need to be added. And then I'll do another dry run the day before. So it's really fresh. I cannot remember all what it's on, but it definitely won't be boring. I can promise you that. Never. Okay. Okay. Scrolling through. All right. Oh, we got some people from all over the place. I missed a lot of questions up above. Came in after having Apame hives for a while. Can you give me your honest opinion on Apame hives and do you recommend them for relatively new beekeepers? How about their 7 frame nucleus colony? I really like the 7 frame nuke, and honestly, I like my Apame colonies. I'll shoot you straight with it though. They're expensive. That's the biggest thing they have going against them is the price point. However, they are built well, and I see them lasting a very long time. There's a lot of thought that has gone into them, and the bees do well in them. I personally do believe that insulation does help the bees. Cost is sometimes a little bit of a factor there on are we going to do this or not. However, is it better for the bees? I truly believe so. Insulation is better for our energy bills. Bees have air conditioner bees and they have bees working to heat the hive. So anything that we do as beekeepers to lessen that amount of effort conserves honey and conserves really lifespan. Bees are using their life energy to heat and cool. And so if they use 30% less, will they live 30% longer? I probably not, but is it another 4 or 5 days? I don't know. So I do think that they're a good hive though, and they're going to be at the conference again this year. Might be a good opportunity to get some. But yeah, as far as bad things to say about them, really the cost is the only thing that I could really give a knock on those things for. They hold up well. I love the fact that when I take my hive tool and crank down on anything, the plastic is so strong. It's just as good as cranking up against a wooden hive or better. So good hive. Okay. Hey, Vanderpool Farm. So Vanderpool, what are you guys doing this time of the year with your bees? Are you still in Oregon, or are you moving bees throughout the country. What's going on? You guys working on controlling mites, feeding bees up for a fall flow, or winter bees, or are you expecting a fall flow up there? All right. Cayman. When and where will you be in Alabama? Alabama. So I will be going through. Um, I can't tell you where yet, but I will be going right down through the middle of Alabama, almost all the way to like Mobile. So I will update everybody on that. That one's pretty fresh. However, even if you can't make it, maybe we can do like a meet and greet type thing somewhere. Cayman, what day are you talking in West Virginia? All right. So here's my I'm a Maryland beekeeper shirt. I wear this periodically because I like the shirt. And it's funny, I hated yellow as a kid. When you're a beekeeper, you gotta like yellow. But a lot of people are like, are you from Maryland? And I'm like, no, I am not. But it is a cool shirt. West Virginia, the 9th and 10th of September. Arkansas, the 23rd and the 24th of September. Tennessee, the 8th of October. And White House, part of Tennessee. I'll be in Missouri, the 14th and 15th of October for the state club. And then I'll be in Joplin, Missouri, which is almost over there in Oklahoma and all that region right there at the southwest corner on the 12th of November. I was just working on my flight for that this evening. So busy, busy, busy. And there's a few other odds and ends too. Lots of Zoom meetings and stuff in between. Keeping the candle lit on both ends. Cayman, do you have a quick link to the West Virginia conference? Let me see here. If you guys will bear with me. So go ahead and drop some more questions down there, and I will get to them shortly. And I will pull this up in my, there it is, email. Okay. All right. So it is the WVBA. Okay. So if you go to wvbeekeepers.org, here we go. wvbeekeepers.org. That reminds me of the 90s. All right, that should be the link right there, everybody who would like to go to the West Virginia one. All right. What club are you speaking on October the 8th? I believe that is the Tennessee one. So what Tennessee did this year, instead of having their big TBA conference in the fall, they broke it up into 4 groups throughout Tennessee. And I was asked to speak at 2 of them, but I was already speaking on one of those dates. But I will be speaking at this one in White House, Tennessee. And it's just a 1-day event, but it should still be quite a bit fun. I don't think they should have broke it up, but that's okay. You just come to the Hive Life conference instead. We have, if you include vendors and staff, we're knocking on the door of 1,200 people already going to be there. Way bigger than last year. We opened up registration the 3rd or 4th week of August, I think, last year. So, yeah, it's going to be wild. And you guys have no clue the crazy stuff that we're going to do this year. It's going to be fun. Cayman, have you heard anything about Bob Benny using tea tree oil on towels and stuff like that? I've talked to him a little bit about it. I really don't know like the recipe offhand, and I think he got that from another guy who is coming to the conference. So we may have some talks at the conference that are not strictly per label, but maybe they should be. And we'll see. Ultimately, this is the way I look at it. It needs to be safe, number one. So as long as it's safe, I really don't care about talking about it. Um, if it's safe for humans to consume. And the problem is there's a lot of products that should be legal, but they're not because it takes so much crazy amount of money just to make it legal. And then when they do make it legal, like Apabioxyl, the oxalic acid crystals, it's 10, 15 times what you could get it from the hardware store from. And, it just, there's a lot of variables there. But ultimately, your bees don't care if you killed your mites with a legal product or not if they're dead. Um, so it just needs to be a safe product and it needs to work. We need to know what we're doing. All this guesswork and crazy stuff that's been going on for decades now, it's time to get rid of it. We have the technology, we have the community, we have the ability to be able to test and work together and find out what works. And so we just got to all put a little bit more work into it. And I'm not accusing anybody, but nobody's going to help beekeepers out but ourselves. All right, getting back to questions. For the life of me, I can't find my queens. When I go to my mentor, I find his queen in seconds, but I never can find mine. Any tips? Practice makes perfect, John. There's some queens that are difficult to spot, though, and especially the more bees that are in the hive, the harder they are. There's sometimes I'll get into a colony and I'll find her within a frame or two, and there's sometimes I'll pull every darn frame out of there. And some queens just are more shy, more sensitive. Some queens, they'll be in direct sunlight and they will be laying away. And some queens, a little bit hint of sunlight comes to that hive and choo, they're off to the darkest corner of the box. And a lot depends on how you handle the boxes too and the type of bee. So that's one of the things we breed for is um, bees that are not runny and running all over the combs. So Vanderpool Farm says mite control started early this year for many of us. Formic acid with supers on. No other choice, or it would have been way too late. Bees rebounding with solid sealed brood. Awesome. So when you're applying that formic acid, Vanderpool Farms, what temperature ranges are you using it? Because I have talked to guys who say that they're using, even around 90 degrees or so. So what do you have to say about that if you don't care to answer? Cayman, if you try to license 6-frame insulated hives, I think they would work well for early spring splits. So Tristan, I have actually one 6-frame insulated hive. It's a polystyrene. It's great. Um, it's perfect. I like them as nukes more than I like them as full-sized hives because I move my full-sized hives to honey yards and switch things out a lot more. They take a lot more abuse. But to overwinter a nuke or to make a split into one, insulated nukes work fantastic, especially for the beekeeper who's not trucking bees around, and especially in spring. Heck, even in hot months, it really helps those bees maintain that cluster and do better. So, Better Bee will be there. Licensed products will be there big time. All kinds of stuff. I want to say a huge thank you to Jim with Brannigan Music, it looks like. He just donated to our PayPal, and I want to say a monstrous thank you to him for supporting what we're doing tonight and in the future. And of course, Brian Reese, big thank you, Brian. Are we going to be seeing you anytime soon? You coming through Tennessee? You got to let me know. But I know I'm going to see you at the conference. You've been there every time. There's actually quite a few people that have been to every single one. It's getting to be kind of like a reunion every year. It's quite a bit of fun, and it's amazing to see how many people where they were at 3 years ago and where they are now. Same for me too. I mean, 3 years ago we didn't have a conference, so pretty crazy. Horizontal bees. Haley, I think, came and said he was going to let us in. We've never had a conference without horizontal bees being there. We're not going to start now. Cayman, can you tell me the typical time frame for a virgin queen to mate and start laying after emerging? Okay, now lots of variables here with weather and stuff, but this is how I think of it: is that if I put a queen cell in that is ripe, which mine are all timed, I'm going to put it in about around day 10. So the cells should emerge within a day and a half, 2 days, 2.5 days. There's variables there. Let's just say 2 days. She might not take a mating flight for 3, 4 days. 2 days. There's some variables there on how long she'll stay in the colony. And there is some research that shows that typically when the virgin is in a smaller colony, she typically goes on mating flights faster than if they're in a bigger colony. I have not heard if this is advantageous or not for longevity of the queen, for the health of her. Maybe there's a sense of urgency, or maybe it's just the fact that the colony is so big and there's so many other bees in there. It's uh, maybe they're messing with her, excited or whatever, and it just takes her longer to get out of the hive. I don't know. I'd love to see some information on that. So emergence to flight time, we're probably looking at 5 days to a week, depending on various things. Then she's going to go out and fly over a few days. So probably by the time she comes back and starts laying, because it takes a day or two for that queen to start laying, we're talking it's going to take a pretty good bit of time. When I drop a queen cell in, I don't come back for 21 days. There's no reason to. Let her come back. Let her lay for a good little while. I like to let them lay for about a week. So 21 days should do that. And at 21 days, if you don't have a queen, then there's something wrong that's laying. Now, if you have some crazy bad weather, it might slow that just a little bit longer out, but typically drop the cell, don't come back for 3 weeks. That's my plan. But if we don't see a queen in 3 weeks, if we have 10 hives, we do it to, for example, and seven of them have laying queens and the other three don't, we immediately um, check around those 3 colonies and see if there's a virgin running around. But if there's not, then we just combine them back with other colonies and be done with it. So thanks again, Brian Reese, for donating to our channel. And thanks also again to Vanderpool Farms for saying, hit that like button. It does help us out quite a bit. And okay, where are we? So formic application is fine into 90 degrees, but we worry about temps so high that bees are hauling water, cooling and fanning, thereby blowing the vapor right out of the entrance. Interesting. I haven't used formic acid a ton, and I need to learn more about it. Of course, there's variables with humidity as well. But formic, well, I know guys who are in Hawaii that are running like 2,000 colonies that have used formic acid for over a decade with good success. So I think a lot of it is using it timely, but also even if it's a little hot, just understanding that you're going to lose some queens. And I think that's the difference with guys like Harry Vanderpool, who is Vanderpool Farms, running these large operations. These guys understand the percentage game of beekeeping. They understand that there's no such thing as 100% success with queen mating, and that you're going to lose some queens. You have to have fresh new queens coming into the operation as old queens are expiring. Maybe some of those queens expire once that formic treatment hits them because they're already a little old. You have backup plans. Heck, if you're a good business, you might have some backup plans for your backup plans. But the insurance policy side of beekeeping is really a fundamental. And it's something that new beekeepers don't grasp early on because a lot of the beginning literature doesn't talk about this enough. And just knowing that how difficult it is to just keep 5 hives right where they need to be all throughout the year is very difficult for anybody. And so there's going to be ups and downs, and just planning for that. All right, Bohemia Bees is on tonight. Good to see you, Jason. All right, James McNally, did you say, can you send it to me? Are you talking to me or somebody else? Okay, so going through more questions here. Do you do walkaway splits after your harvest as a brood break as part of your mite mitigation strategy? I don't. I typically don't do the walkaway splits, but you can use queen cells for that too. Now, maybe if you planned a walkaway split, you could do that as well. I'm just not a huge fan of walkaway splits, and I don't have to be because I can raise my own queen cells. I was very pleased with the last batch of queen cells I purchased from Corey Stevens. I got a little over 80% acceptance on those during a rough part of the season with a strong dearth because of the lack of rain for almost 5 weeks, and still got a good percentage. The queens are laying well. So Corey Stevens queens did very good for me. The cells were plump and very nice. But where I'm going with that is I dropped those in, came back to the colonies and hit them with oxalic acid. May or may not have done 4 times the dose that was supposed to be used on them, but the queen was laying gorgeous patterns of larvae, but they hadn't capped it yet. And you hit them, and that works really good too. So with cells, if you're careful and you make the splits in a certain way where they only have capped brood when you make them up, by the time she comes back and starts laying, you don't have any capped brood, and the mites are very vulnerable. And Vanderpool Farms, thank you very much for filling us in a little bit on your oxalic acid, formic acid strategy. All right. Don't read a book, watch YouTube. Well, I wouldn't go that far. I'm a monster fan of books, but you have to be careful with YouTube. But you also have to be careful with some of these new books. Um, Seems like some of this literature really is everything works, and just enjoy beekeeping. And I want everyone to be able to enjoy beekeeping. I really do, but it's going to roll up your sleeves and get ready to go sweat. Get out there and work those bees. Kamon, any specific VSH queens that you would recommend? If I was going to recommend a VSH queen right now, Berserker's Bee Farm, I would recommend Corey Stevens or something from a Harbo line, something like that. Corey puts a lot of work into his queens, and I've talked to Corey several times. And so I feel really, really comfortable that he's putting the work into it. Um, there's a lot of organizations out there that it seems like half of their ability to control mites is just belief that it works. And I don't operate that way anymore. Corey seems to really have it thought out and dialed in. And it sounds very difficult and hard. And you know what? That's why I trust it, because that's how the reality is. If it's too good to be true, it usually is. Um, but I actually have one of Corey Stevens' breeder queens. We'll see how it goes. This was my first time using this much VSH in a long time. And the VSH of old, I was not a big fan of. They were not the most productive bees in the world. I'm going to try out, about around 50 or 60 colonies with VSH and just see how it goes for me next year. So my last mite treatment is going to be this month. August, I want to have all my bees treated up. I really want to go into winter with under 1% infestation rate. So if you get an alcohol wash and you wash 300 bees, you don't want to see, I really don't like to see 1%, but definitely nothing more than that. And so we want our mites low, and then we will clean them up in December, because here in December we get a lot of 50, 60 degree Fahrenheit days, and I can use either oxalic acid vapor or oxalic acid dribble, clean them up, and hit them more than once. I hit mine twice. Bob Benny hits his 3 times with oxalic acid vapor. And that's a slow time of the year. There's not a lot of work to do. You might as well clean them up. If you can get them down to where they're like a tenth of 1%, those bees are going to look so good coming out of the winter. It's worth the effort. When in doubt, nuke them out. That's right. Yeah, Dewey's book is a great book. Well, thank you very much for saying so. Beekeeping, Vancouver, Washington. Let me grab that book real quick. It's right here. Oh goodness. So I'm a big book nerd. So I want to talk about a couple of my favorite books. If you like to read, this is a good one right here. If you're wanting just overall general bee knowledge at a very high level, it is just full of everything that you can imagine. And there's lots of pictures to go with it. I mean, candle making, treatments, bee biology. I mean, it is just like going to a university, but it's not written in a way that you feel like you're in school. At least it's not to me. It's an easy read and it's massive and it's hardback. You could literally take this into a battlefield, and I don't think they could probably drive a sword through this. This is a pretty heavy book. Now, where did that come from? All right, so this is a really good book, and Larry Connor and Wickwasp Press is one of my favorite places to get books. You know, they don't pay me to do this kind of stuff. I recommend them because it's good stuff. Now, a book that I really, really love is Honey in the Comb by Eugene Killian. Even if you're not wanting to do honeycomb production, it is an amazing book at how to manage bees for honey production and how to use their natural tendencies to and work with those natural tendencies to better yourself as a beekeeper using proper techniques to encourage comb honey production, requeening, splitting, supering. I love Eugene Killian's book, and unfortunately, he passed away this year. And I've always been a huge fan of that book and Eugene. Now, that book is also very well written. Of course, there's a Split Essentials, Swarm Essentials. One of my favorite entry books is How to Keep Bees and Sell Honey by Walter T. Kelly. But all of these books are being written by not somebody who's, no offense, keeping 3 or 4 hives. A lot of the newer books are. These are books written by people who have given their life to the entire industry and have survived in the industry for a long time. So I also love GM Doolittle's books. I've got a few other favorites, but those are some of my favorites. Oh, Laurel just left a link for the honeybee biology book. All right, Dave Dwyer, thank you so much for donating tonight and for coming on. All right, getting back to some questions. Patrick Parents has just bought the 2022 Hive Life Conference. Lots of good stuff there. Thanks for that. Love it. Hey, thanks so much for supporting us in that capacity as well. That's something we'll be doing again this year. Is we will have all the conference videos professionally recorded, and they are on, oh gosh, Vimeo, I think it is, and there is a fee for it. However, they are very well done. The audio is good. They're going to be done even better this year. And the cool thing is they're going to be like the same price point, but we're going to have more than double the speakers this year. And it's going to be just awesome. We got a killer speaker lineup this year. Just awesome beekeepers from literally all over North America and out of North America. It's going to be sweet. I'm excited to learn. That's half the reason I get excited about the conference is just because I'm a beekeeper and I like to see all the gear, like to listen to some of these speakers myself. All right. Will you be planning to come up to the northeastern area? So I haven't had, I was up in Maryland earlier this year, but I don't think I have anything booked in the near future northeast. I have North Carolina next year. I think Virginia, a few other ones next year. Most of mine are in the heartland, and a few of them in the Northwest. But during certain times of the year, I do like to travel and meet beekeepers and bees. So that's good. Came in a while back. You made a comment that a lot of honey sold at major grocery stores is not real honey. I'm a new beekeeper and I'm just curious what you meant by that. Thanks for your videos. Lots of variables with that. The problem is, Jeff, is honey is one of the most adulterated foods in the United States. It's gotten a little bit better the last couple of years because there's been some lawsuits on imports of honey from certain countries, China, and they are dumping fake stuff into a tiny bit of real honey and mixing maybe a little bit of pollen with it and just getting it through the system. And they're selling it so stupid low that it's really impacting the economy for commercial beekeepers. And it's really gutting us. Our country does a terrible job right now at protecting American jobs and interest, but they're really good at protecting their own. Now, that's getting off on another tangent there. However, most of the honey in the store is not real honey. Now, there are guys like Bob Benny, for example. He sells to Kroger's. He sells to some huge stores. I'm not sure if he does the any Walmarts or anything like that. But I know Bob sends out semi loads of real honey, and so does Rick Sutton and many professional beekeepers do that, but a large percentage of, especially the cheap stuff that you see in stores, is not real, or it's half and half or something like that. It's hard to know. And honestly, I wouldn't buy honey unless I knew fairly, certain who I was getting it from, just because it's so adulterated. Here in Tennessee, sourwood honey in the Smoky Mountain areas goes for such a huge premium. And everyone sourwood, sourwood, sourwood. But the reality of it is, a lot of the beekeepers that I know that work sourwood, they understand that some years we get good sourwood flows, some years we don't. However, there are these guys that run like 30 hives that are selling truckloads of sourwood every year. Hmm. There's a lot of that goes on, but tourists come into the Great Smoky Mountains. They don't know. They want a taste of some real mountain honey. And unfortunately, the majority never actually taste it. It's so frustrating, and more needs to be done in that regard. But most people don't actually eat real honey if they're just buying stuff in the store. And I remember as a kid tasting my first honey bear plastic container from Walmart and just thinking that was the most gross stuff on earth. Why would anybody eat honey? And I was probably about 10 years old. 4 or 5 years later, I was at a I was doing farmers markets and I met a guy who was selling honey, and he had black locust and he had late spring honey that was darker, and you could just tell instantly that this was totally different, very floral, a lot of different notes of flavors in the honey, and it was just a totally different experience. And from that point on, I had to become a beekeeper, and here we are. Crazy, isn't it? Journey, the outdoors, hunting and fishing. All right, that sounds like my kind of thing right there. Thank you so much for the donation. When do you start to prep for winter and Indiana? Okay, so Indiana, so you're a little bit cooler than we are. I actually used to live in Indiana, so I'm fairly familiar because we go up there from time to time with the weather. Now, I'm working on winter pre-prep right now. We're getting plenty of nutrition. If this colony has a queen issue, get a new queen, get it in, or replace one from my own, whatever. Great queens, dead mites, and good nutrition. That's what we're all about. I don't pull any fall honey. Some people do, and that's fantastic. That adds a whole nother wrinkle to this that I'm not going to talk about. So that goes all the way into great queens, dead mites, and good nutrition into September. We get that fall flow, and hopefully our bees are in great shape so they build up. We want that nice jump in brood production for those winter bees during that fall flow. That is a very critical time. The healthier our bees are hitting that fall flow, the better chance of overwintering and definitely a better chance of a big honey yield or nuke production or a little bit of both, depending on your desires. But as far as winter prep goes, I really don't start a lot of that until October. Here, it's still 50, 60. Heck, we'll get 70-degree days in October sometimes. Yeah, we definitely will. Early October get 70-degree days. I love October. It's a great month. November is a great month here. A lot of 60 and 50-degree days. We can be doing winter prep during that. No problem. The bees don't like to be fooled with a lot when it gets around 50, but I do it. Just put on a bee suit, smoke them good. If there's a double deep and it needs to be condensed down, maybe there's too much honey on the sidewalls. It's empty in the middle, and there's some honey kind of isolated towards the bottom. You could totally just take all the brood and the honey, and if it'll fit all in one box, heck, I overwinter singles. Or if you have a triple deep, condense that down into two. If you want to overwinter a double deep, put all the honey in the top deep. And then keep, the bees can stay down below. They'll naturally want to work their way up into that honey, and we'll be feeding them if necessary, all the way into November. If it's 60 degrees out, even if it's cold at night, we can still feed them. Feed some thick 2-to-1. Ideally, get it done early though. Again, I don't pull from the fall flow, so even when the fall flow's going on, I'm not pulling. I'm not going to harvest that. No supers are on. I'll get into colonies. And if I'm like, the fall flow's not getting it done this year, I'll feed during the fall flow. And some colonies, like the big ones, have a big forager population. They won't need any feed some years. The smaller guys will need a lot of feed. Get it done early while it's warm and it's easy for them to ripen it up. It's all about getting it done early, condense those colonies down. September and October, August, just get out there and work and do whatever your bees need at the moment, and you'll be good. But that's basically how I do it. And we can feed. I've seen beekeepers feed in December here. You can do it, but why? Why feed in December when you can be done with it in early October if you fed them hard enough? And again, think about this though. I think a lot of new beekeepers don't understand how much sugar syrup condenses down. 1-to-1, let's say you feed a gallon of it. I don't know exactly how much it condenses down, but we're probably talking maybe a quartish of actual thick honey material, like stored in the comb. That's not very much. Quart will go a distance, but not that much. So we need thicker stuff. And if we're needing to add on a lot of weight, I want to see a deep box on a strong, powerful colony go into winters. That's about 60 pounds. So that's about 9 to 10 frames of food. And the bees will thank you. If you have too much of it, come in February, you're like, man, there's too much in this one hive left over. Just pull a frame out and give it to a colony that's too light. Just like a cassette, just pop it in. I hope none of those young kids are watching right now. What's a cassette? Hey, Ian, how's the honey flow going up there? It's looking pretty good. The reason I commented on that Facebook post of yours, Ian, about the bees pooping on my grandma's car is because she's always on to me. I mean, she rarely visits my house and she never even warns me. But then she'll come over here without me even knowing she's coming. I have like 60 colonies in the yard and we keep them powerful. They'll poop on her car and I get heck over it every time. So I guess it's just part of it. Bee poop's good for you, I'm sure. It's probably some medicinal skin therapy. We just don't know it yet. All right, getting back to some questions. All right, record blackberry flow this year in Washington State. Man, I love blackberry blossoms. My favorite plant. And it's hard to pick because there's so many good ones. But if I had to pick one that was my favorite, blackberry blossom is where it's at. It's a delicious honey, a powerful flow when everything lines up right. And I love blackberries. Hey, Kamon, what's your thoughts on Apagard for mites? What's my thoughts? Let them have it. Give it to them. I use it a lot. Just like any product, you have to be careful with it. But I definitely like to use it. And we've talked a lot about Apagard in this live chat series. Make sure you store it in a cool location on a strong colony. If it's 90 degrees or below, I typically do 50 grams. Well, if it's 90 degrees or above, I drop it down to 30 grams or 30 milliliters or whatever. And so I just use a syringe like this, 50 grams, full dose. If it's really hot, 90 degrees or above, drop it down to 30 grams. If it's a really small colony, maybe drop it down to 20. If you're doing the 30 grams, you do it once a week for 3 weeks back to back, 30, 30, 30. And if you're doing the 50-gram dose, you do it once, come back about 14 days later, and do it again per the instructions. There's some variables with Apagard, but it's a good product. It's not a perfect product. We don't have any of those. Yeah, Ian's hard to get a hold of Vanderpool Farms. I don't know if it's a Canadian thing or what, but you would think with all that cold, long winter weather they have, they'd have a few moments to answer a message or an email. I don't know what Ian does all the time. It's just plowing snow and probably playing hockey, maybe a brewski, um, all that stuff. Now, Ian's one of the craziest hardworking guys I know. ECP says, I think autumn olive honey is pretty good. Yeah, that's some good stuff right there too. Love autumn olive. Now, I will say, and I'm not going to say whose it was, but at our honey show at the Hive Life conference, somebody entered some honey in that was, for me, not that delicious. Now, everyone has different taste buds and all that kind of stuff, but whoo. And what happened was, is somebody entered it in, and it was definitely honey. But one of the judge was like, try this. And I'm like, all right, I'm expecting it to be pretty good. And it was the worst honey I've ever had in my life. And he's like, isn't that awful? And I'm like, yeah, I need some water. And he's like, yeah, I did too. Honey can be really interesting. And that's part of the reason I don't go for the fall flow. First of all, it's not super consistent here. It's a lot of extra work that I just prefer the bees to have it. But then the fall honey here isn't really that delicious to me. And I've harvested it before in good years, and my customers just didn't really like it that much. So I really try to focus my efforts on a massive, big spring crop and having bees ready to go at that time and trying to average 100 pounds per honey production colony. And in a good average year, we can totally do that or more. But have a bee yard. We have a bee yard that has 40 colonies and one that has 50 in it, and we averaged 100 pounds in each hive. Well, across the yard, there was probably some that were around 60 to 70, but there was a couple that were pushing like 142. And if we can average 100 pounds throughout the yard, you do that over 100 colonies. That's a lot of honey, a lot of management. Lucas Giles, thank you so much, Lucas, for supporting us again. I just got done with the treatment, he says, with Apifar, 3 rounds, 3 weeks. So 3 rounds, 3 weeks with Apifar. Would that be Apagard, Lucas? While treating, I threw on a box of foundation and fed 1 gallon a week of syrup. Only had about 25% drawn full boxes, but most drew a couple frames. How can I get better results? So first of all, I don't know. I can't remember exactly where you are, Lucas. And I can get bees to draw foundation pretty good in June and a little bit in early July. The bees are still so populous, but our dearth really starts hitting with the pollen and the diversity around early June. So from that moment when the diversity starts dropping, the population starts going down. And the more that goes down, the harder and harder it gets to get that comb drawn. And you probably need to feed a little bit more than that, I'd say. A gallon a week is probably not enough during that time. During like a good blackberry flow, the bees can bring in 10 pounds of nectar in a day or more. So it depends on the day, but it can be just tons of weight that comes in a day. And so 1 gallon is probably only about of 1 to 1, 10, 11 gallons, pounds, excuse me, of material. So I would say you have to feed a little bit more because it's not enough spread over the week to draw it out, and also you need to be kind of earlier in the season. If there's good pollen coming in and it's just a lack of nectar, it should be easy to draw stuff because the bees should still want to be going forward as long as they have plenty of diverse, healthy pollens. My problem is our nectar actually outlasts our diverse pollens, so we'll have nectar up to about the second week of June, but pollen diversity really starts taking a nosedive towards the first part of June. And you really start seeing the differences in the colony size by mid July, big time. I can draw some foundation this time of the year, but I have to work very hard. And only the best of the best colonies with queens that have plenty of nutrition and are just laying like crazy. And if I'm feeding them crazy hard, is it going to happen? So it's just very, very intense. And I try to get all of my combs drawn by early July. These days, I really just don't try to fight anymore. Last 20 years is, if it's taught me one thing, is you can only push Mother Nature so far, trying to push the splitting season, queen rearing season, comb drawing season, all of those seasons. There's a time for it. And when it is time for, I just need to have everything that I possibly can in place to take as much advantage of it as I possibly can while the getting's good. Hey, hi fi, good talking to you the other day. Hope you're doing good. Are you disheartened by how little the general public knows about bees? The number of people who ask if I want a paper wasp nest from their porch in my apiary, or what my honey recipe is, it saddens me. So Tyler Jenkins, yeah, it's a little disappointing, but it is what it is. And honestly, beekeepers have nobody to blame more than ourselves over that. We've got to do a better job. And I'm pointing the finger at myself, everybody else. We are the best ambassadors for this whole thing about bees, positivity, getting it out there, being active. We need to be successful. And success for somebody might be 5 hives and yearly producing honey and keeping them alive. That's awesome. But you need to be able to do that because somebody like that might be the one that teaches a young person like me at 14 years old about bees for the first time. And then I become a professional beekeeper, maybe put on a conference where all the crazy people get together and talk about more bee stuff. You never know. And we've got to do a better job about incorporating it in our lives too. Beekeepers, and talking about myself right here. We're bad about incorporating it into our food. We're bad about using propolis, pollen. We're not good about it. But you also, in some fairness, you look at cultures that like 1 out of every 10 households keeps bees, and these are cultures that have kept bees for thousands of years. And some of them, I mean, it's like our country hasn't even been around. Honeybees haven't been here fraction of that time. So it's not as steeped into the culture. And and here in the USA, it's very different than it is in other countries. We don't appreciate food here, especially good foods. No wonder we have so many health problems. We have so many chemicals and everything. It's all about what's the cheapest. It's a competition to the bottom here when it comes to food. And it shouldn't be that way. Other countries revere and are proud of their food. So a lot of people look at a jar of honey and go, what's so special about that? That's where we got to educate them. But the first thing we have to do is be successful. And things are changing and things are getting better. We have had some big opportunities in beekeeping in the last 15 to 20 years. When CCD happened back around 2006 area, there was a ton of beekeepers that came in trying to save the bees. The problem was the educational system was not there. And obviously, not everybody's going to stick around. But the problem was beekeepers would get into it, they'd spend their money, they'd lose their shirt to Varroa because they didn't understand. And at that time, it was monstrously appealing and common knowledge and really pushed online. Don't treat bees, don't feed bees, don't lazy, lazy beekeeping. And I'm not saying if you do some of that, you are lazy, but that was the message. That was a massive opportunity. Thousands upon thousands of new people came in, but we weren't able to help them be successful by and large. And we're all busy. So we have a short window to get these new people to come in and help them make a little bit of honey, keep their bees alive, and finish getting them addicted and staying in. Then the next big opportunity was the flow hive. It brought tons of people into it. That was the best thing it did, but the educational system still wasn't quite there. However, times have changed. We have some awesome opportunities now with guys like Bob Benny being on YouTube. I try to do my best on YouTube. There's so many guys from Bruce Jean, Mike Berry. There's a massive community now, and we are able to rally around successful people and bring more people up into the area of success, how they would like to define it. It's infectious, it's going to spread, and everything is growing. And it's going to continue to grow as more opportunity exists. And money is the driver. And there's nothing wrong with that. When businesses come to our conference and they sell $20,000, do you think that they're going to try harder and bring more stuff next year? Darn tootin'. And they are. We got 20% off Premier Foundation. We're going to have 4 massive deals. These opportunities never existed before at a conference. Things are changing, and I'm getting on a little bit of a rant here, but we can make the change happen. And if I have anything to say about it, we're going to. And companies that aren't going to toe the line for beekeepers are going to pay for it because information has gotten to be so much faster now. We can communicate so much faster, and it's going to change everything. But money is the driver. We've got to find the men and women who are creative and inventive and smart and bringing value to the industry and reward them and incentivize them by propping them on a pedestal, either educating us or paying them for their product so they'll do more of the same. Anyways, enough of that. I'm not disheartened though. I'm excited. Cayman, why do they use terramycin NB? So that is used for like EFB and whatnot, and other reasons. I've never once used terramycin. I don't truck my bees around the country and expose them to things. So I think that's part of the reason I'm able to get away with that. Also, we select at a high level for EFB resistance and chalk brood, different things like that. So if we see an issue with that, requeen, get it out. I also think thymol and just keeping the mites low and keeping stress low really helps as well. But I think the thing that helps us out the most with that is we're breeding against it, and we're not trucking our bees and exposing them to a lot of stress and other colonies with EFB. But I've never used terramycin. All right. So we got Roy Don from Australia. Good day. Can't do it, but I tried. Cayman, is there an opportunity for the companies at the conference to provide discounts outside the USA, like Canada? Hey, James, anything that you guys are wanting to do, you contact me, James. Send me an email or something. We'll go back and forth. We'll find something. We're all about creativity. If it brings value to beekeepers, we want to be a part of it and help you be able to do the same. That's right. Darn tootin', Jerome Bee Farm. Cayman, I got a queen with a bad back leg that she can't use, but she gets around okay. Should I requeen, or is that okay to wait till spring? It depends on how old she is, Jason. If she's a fairly new queen, I may let it run its course. Um, some beekeepers would, however, I mean, last year I actually filmed a video on this colony last year, and we let her go, and she had one leg that she just could not move, but the other 5 were working great. Produced over 100 pounds off of that colony. Excellent queen, great brood patterns. She was awesome. So I would judge that colony based on her performance right now. What do those brood patterns look like? Is she getting it done? And if she's getting it done, I say ride that train as long as it'll go throughout the rest of this year. Okay. Cayman, what to do with a hive that's showing deformed wing virus? Well, the first thing is to lower any mite loads if they're high, Chris, right? You've got to get those mites down because they're vectoring it through. The problem is once viruses start really taking hold, even if you drop the mites, it doesn't always clear it up. The other thing is sometimes it's not the mites that has caused this to happen. There's other stressors that can cause viruses to kind of take hold. And sometimes when a new strain comes through, that also just just like when a new virus or a new version of the cold or something comes through, our bodies have to get immune to it, and that's really all we can do about that kind of stuff is just deal with it and keep our immune system up so we're stronger when it does hit us. Same thing with our bees. Right now, what I would do is verify that my mites are low, get some nutrition pumping through that colony. That feeding some sugar syrup, those things actually help in these situations. And maybe a little bit of you could add a little bit of Hive Alive or something with a little bit of thymol, maybe a little more of a clean out effect, and that could be helpful. But that's why I really try to avoid viruses like the plague. We don't really have a lot of good things for combating viruses. If we can kill the mites and eliminate stressors from and the viruses from ever setting in, we can do that. But once the viruses really take hold, it's a little tricky. And if it gets real bad, requeening. The queens can come down with viruses, and if she's laying copies of viruses in each one of those eggs, then that's a problem. So a lot of times, requeen, clean them out, kill those mites, and try not to let it happen if at all possible. So Nick says, I made some July splits that are testing zero mites in a wash. Should I still treat them in August? They are 5+ frame nukes now. Maybe check them in late August, early September. Maybe do a random wash or two throughout there and see where they're at. If they're real low, still don't bother treating unless you want to just go ahead and hit them with some oxalic acid vapor or a softer treatment that'll just kind of chip away at what is in there. Came in my hives have screened bottom boards. I want to treat with oxalic acid vapor, but I don't have a shim slatted rack. I don't want to burn the bees with the wand. Would using it under the screen, then shutting work? Hmm. You might be able to make some type of little device that could cut off some of the air flow, but that would be a little bit tricky right there. It would go up for a little bit, but the problem is oxalic acid vapor as it cools wants to sink. So I don't know how effective that would be for you. And I've never used a pan vaporizer, so I'm not even 100% sure how that would work and react. I do know one guy that burned a hive to the ground with. He left it in too long. He went off on a phone call and came back, and the hive was on fire. So watch out for that. Sorry, I really don't know what else to say about it. Excuse me. All right. So where are we at? I ordered the instant VAP, so it won't be a problem once it comes in, but thanks. All right. Well, that is going to be like going from a tricycle to a monster truck in difference. It's going to be quite huge. I do really like my instant VAP quite a bit. It does have some limitations with the battery if you're a large scale guy, but if you got a handful of batteries around and a handful of hives, then I love the measuring dealio on that thing. I that in of itself is just sweet being able to just drop that in, just takes off. I love it. All about that speed and just makes it so easy. Cayman, any tips on good ratios for newly mated queens to build them up before I stack on the 2-to-1 sugar ratio? So what I want to look right now is on those newly mated queens, if they're in a small colony or a big colony, they just need to constantly have food stored coming in. They just need to have plenty because they need to build up for this coming winter. So you could be feeding them 1 to 1. Heck, if they don't need a lot of weight, you're like, man, they already have a lot of food in there, but I'm wanting to stimulate them. It doesn't even need to be 1 to 1. I'll feed colonies half of a pound of sugar sometimes to a pound of water, very thin, but nectar is very thin too. You could go 3/4 of a pound of sugar to 1 pound of water. So you're really not putting on a lot of weight, but you can maintain the weight that they have using that and stimulate them. So really the world's your oyster with these ratios. Look at the colonies and like this is they're good on weight. I just want to maintain them and stimulate them. Very thin syrup. Uh-oh. We're still in a warm time of the year, but they're way too light. Use 2 to 1 if you want to. Even if it's in July, you know. So just kind of fine tune it. And the more you kind of mess around with it a little bit, Brandon, the more you'll find that um, a little flexibility there is quite a bit of fun. I enjoy it quite a bit. Want to know what makes a difference? Professionals like yourself treat us as newbies as equals, and answer our stupid questions like they matter. Well, Diane Morris, to that I'll say it wasn't that long ago I was asking, I guess, stupid questions, but I think probably the most dumb question is the one not asked. When you don't know, you don't know, and so I'm a big believer in what. Get out of here. Laurel pops in the door. I think I'm in trouble. And she's like, what do you mean you don't ask any dumb questions? You ask me those all the time. Get out of here. See, God put women on this earth to keep men humble. I think that's the only reason he said it was a helpmate, but I think it was to keep them humble. Okay. Okay. Gosh, you just can't win. But no, there's no such thing as stupid questions. And you got to ask them. And that's how you learn. I want you all to be successful because you guys are ambassadors for the industry. Even if you're just selling a 5 gallon bucket of honey a year, that's cool. It does a lot. It does more than you know. And it does a whole lot more than any other organization I'm aware of is going to do for us. So um, definitely ask those questions and more than happy to talk to another beekeeper. Some of my favorite beekeepers keep a tenth of the hives that I do. Great people. So thanks so much for donating again. This comment says, I just posted a video of my test box with half of the frames coated with propolis instead of wax. No difference. All the frames were drawn out the same. I dissolved propolis in alcohol and sprayed it on the frames. Super easy. Huh. You ought to send me a link to that. I've never seen that done before. It's really interesting. I actually have a video coming up on propolis, but it's not on coating foundation or anything like that. Propolis is something that we don't talk about enough, and we definitely underutilize. Probably not only for the health of our bees, but for our own personal health. I want to learn a lot more about it. Came when I try to feed my nukes, but saw a good deal of robbing from my other hives. That is a pain in the butt. I hate robbing. It's the worst bee characteristic in my opinion. However, if it was eliminated, that means bees would not be good at foraging for honey. So probably bees that rob the least are probably not as good at making honey. I don't know, but it's there, and I don't like it. We feed a lot of times late in the evening. Keeping the yards equalized in strength helps out a lot. Taking mating nukes and splits during that dearth robbing season to different yards and locations to not have that pressure from the big colonies really helps out. So there's several things that can be done to help that, but it's still a challenge every year. Bob posted an interesting video on ratios this morning. Huh, I haven't seen that video, but I need to. Yeah, Bob's the guru when it comes to sugar syrup ratios. He's a bee legend. All right. And that's why Bob's coming to our conference for the third year in a row. There's not a lot of people that I would actually ask to be at our conference 3 years in a row. Heck, if Bob wanted to be there 10 years in a row, we'd have him 10 years in a row. The guy's got more knowledge and 10 of his brain cells I've probably got in my entire brain. Um, Lots of respect for the guy, and he's just a great role model and personality for the industry. So, what more can you really ask for? Exactly what I'd love to have. Even if he didn't want to speak, we'd pay him to come out just to hang out with us, so we can see that hair parted down the middle, that rebellious hair. There's a story behind that, and it is absolutely the funniest Bob Benny story on earth. And Bob did come from Oregon. Hey, Cayman, I need a new bee suit. You teased us with a new type coming to market. When will it be available, and will it be worth the wait? It definitely is. Gosh, I'm not really supposed to talk about it yet. However, one another good company is Ultra Breeze. It is a I've had my jacket for years, well taken care of. It should last a decade for a hobby beekeeper, as long as you don't do anything crazy, like straddle a barbed wire fence. These kind of suits are really good at getting caught in there, and they're not cheap, but they last a really long time. So personally, I think over the time that you have them, it's totally worth it. Now, this other suit is maybe just slightly cheaper, but it's not made in the USA, but it's still made really good commercial beekeeping suit, good for hobbyists too. We're working on it. And whenever I do these videos, I have deals. Um, well, I say deals, promises that I've got to keep on waiting for them to get the information I need. So the time is, they're ready to sell them. They have plenty of them in stock and all that kind of stuff. But Ultra Breeze is a great jacket and bee suit, and I will work on that. I will call them tomorrow and say, I have Sharon, and she says that she wants one, and you guys don't have it ready yet. That's a problem. You can't sell something if you don't have it. I will work on it. As soon as I get the green light from them, we will have a video. All right, Patrick Perrin, your experience with foundationless frames. They can work, and you can totally make them work, but I have had as many as 1,000 foundationless frames back about 10 years ago. Oh, man. Um, what a lot of work that was. The bees wanted to go crazy with it in some locations. Sometimes they drew it really good, but then they'd have a patch of drone brood this big, and they'd have a worker over here, and they were a lot weaker, especially in their first or second year, and they would be I'd be turning them up on a hot day and they'd fall off, or it 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 just was a pain. To me, it's worth the money, but it's not that you can't get away with that. You can do it. If I was going to do something like that, I would purchase some foundation. Hang on, got some right here. Purchase some foundation like this from Walter T. Kelly. They still do make this up in Clarkson, Kentucky. It's basically the last thing that I'm aware of that is still done as Kelly's used to. It's really a shame, because Kelly's used to be a fantastic company with a lot of unique things and a lot of creativity. But I would take this, and you can cut these into strips and make about 4 strips out of this right here. And that would help them start it straight in the middle of the frame, and then make sure that your hives are level as well if you're going to do that. Personally, don't like it. Um, but if you're going to, it's totally doable. All right, back up to question. Okay. Yeah, Pierce Beekeeping says, "I love my Ultra Breeze. Great suit. It is. It's a great suit, made in the USA too." And oh, so speaking, since Pierce is on right now, I'm going to do a little plug. They don't ask for it. I don't get paid for it either, and I'm not asking for that. But here's one of their hot knives right here. It's mine, and I'm looking forward to using this in an upcoming video. I've already done some videos on it, but we're going to do another one here in the future. I've got some extra frames. We're gonna. Oh, by the way, another video. So that's a USA made product right there. Another video that's coming up is I am going to be testing out Thorns extractors. So they're made in the USA up in Wisconsin. They're massive, strong, gonna outlive you. Even the motors made in New York, very, very well made. So a lot of people though have asked me constantly, Cayman, what do you think? What do you think? And I think they're going to be good, but I don't know. So I'm excited to say that Gus Mitchell, who's one of our moderators on here, and we're going to be meeting up and teaming up on some videos over at his place, and we're going to be running that through some of his honey supers through that unit and seeing how well does it operate and work, and we'll let you know. And let me tell you, Gus is not as nice as me. You know, he's got that red beard, that ancestry. He just, if he doesn't like something, he just tells you. No, he's great. Uh, but we're gonna have a fun time testing that one. You'll get to see what it does well and what it doesn't do good. I have seen pictures of the reels. It has got a really, really cool reel inside that extractor. I love the look of it. All right. So I recently got a Comfort Pro bee suit. So far, I love it. It's all polyester but layered, very airy. Haven't tried one of those. Now, can you source a serrated decapping knife with an 18-inch blade? All the ones in the market are just too short for deeps. That's the Pearson, not me. Whoops. Well, I just read it out for you. Maybe they'll see it then. Yeah, of course, the supers that I did in my video with it, it cut through it really good. One of the biggest tricks to using a knife like this, and when I see people that are having issues with them, is first of all, you got to have a good one. The Chinese ones, you might as well just not have purchased one. And then also, it, the frame needs to be low. You need to be cutting like this. You don't need to be cutting up here and working your way down. You need to be able to put a little bit of strength into it. You don't have to be really muscular and all that stuff, but having the appropriate setup and having the frame in the right position to where you can hold it steady and it's low makes it to where you're able to put more force into it. It's able to slide through it and uncap much faster. Almost every time I see a video of somebody going slow with a pierce knife, it's always up into here in their chest height and they're just not handling it correctly. That's right, Gus. Gun show. Laurel's got me working out. She's got me doing all kinds of work. Working outside is what it is. Get outside. Quit talking about bees and go work them. What? That's payback, is what that is. Man, I'm going to be in big trouble after this. Sardines for dinner? Dang it. Oh, goodness. So, all right. Most of these are folks talking to each other, which is all good. I'm getting ready to harvest honey. I was wondering if after I uncap and drain the comb, can I just put the empty comb back and let the bees repair it? Hey, Alex, they can repair it if you put it back on, but they also, if you store them unrepaired, they'll fix it the next year just fine too. So you don't have to do it immediately. A lot of beekeepers just set their supers out in the shade and don't have the frames tied up against each other. A lot of times, like put 8 frames to a super, no more than 9, and let the bees be able to get in there and forage it out and get all the honey out of there, and then store them after that. And the bees will repair them next year just fine during the honey flow. Hmm. Okay, going through the questions. Oh, I see Alex Berry commented up above too. That's why sometimes you have to comment twice because I don't see him the first time. Yeah, Gus is legit. I've known Gus for 14 years. And that's one of the reasons why I have recommended him is because I try not to recommend anything to anybody that I'm not comfortable doing myself and have not tested out. And that's why some of these videos, like the bee suits, um, and things, I don't really release them super fast because we could and buy yours now for 3 installments of 1995. Well, that was prior to, yeah, it's not 1995 anymore for 59.95. But that's one of the reasons why we really try to test all the products out first before we do a video on them. I get about 2 products in every week, and a lot of them just don't deserve to get a video done of them. And some of them I just haven't had the time to get around to it or the condition. A guy sent me something the other day, and I'm like, I won't be able to use that till the honey flow of next year. He's like, "Oh, I we still have a honey flow going on up here." I'm like, "Yeah, we our honey flow we won't have a good honey flow until April of next year. Sorry, pal." It's all appreciated. Don't get me wrong, but snake oils shouldn't be purchased. Oh yeah, hair. So this is about as long as my hair ever gets. It's driving me nuts. I shouldn't complain because there's some people talking about being bald in here, and I'm sure it'll happen to me one of these days as well. When I get looking like this right here and this, it's been busy. I don't like having a beard, and I hate having my hair this long. So we have been busy, but we've updated a lot of stuff for the conference. We've evaluated all of the kids that we are going to accept for the kid program. I've yet to email them, but we got 26 kids that are going to get full rides, guardian, full ride, meals, hotel reimbursement. Just going to have a blast and some special programs and shirts and things for the kids. Going to make it a fun experience. We want to keep them in the industry and help them grow into being tomorrow's teachers and skilled hobbyist sideliners, professional beekeepers. What do you do with frames of uncapped nectar and honey supers before going into winter? I would just set them out, and if you want your bees to have them, if you don't want to extract it, just set them out, and the bees will forage them back out and bring it back into the colony. Gus says, "I don't miss my hair," and then I was like, "Really?" And then there's the Pinocchio. I guess that's an emoji. I think that's what they're called. Cayman running double deep, big population hives, top box becoming honeybound. Should I pull and add full drawn comb frames for queen to lay or too late in the year? Oregon West Coast. Running double deep, big population hives, top box becoming honeybound. So if you got a nectar flow going on, give them some space. That's for sure. Um, if that's honey and it's all honey, just extract it. If it's syrup mixed with honey, then just give them another box. And if they need to go triple deeps, give them a triple deep or 2 deeps and a medium, whatever it takes. Definitely don't want to get them plugged up. That's crazy. We definitely don't have flows like that this late in the year, but if they need room, give it to them as soon as you can. Cayman, have you ever witnessed usurpation of or know anything about that? So I know a little bit about it. I have seen swarms go into colonies. Most of the time, if the swarm is really tiny, they'll get killed by the colony during a dearth. But that's when I've seen it. I wonder how many times I haven't seen it. I've also had queenless cell starters that I know that there's no way they raised a virgin in there and it was released. But there will be a virgin come into the colony and she will take over my cell starter and I'll have a queen in there and she'll ruin all my cells I was going after. So I don't know a ton about it, but I do know it happens, especially with Africanized bees. They are renowned for running small swarms into European honeybees colonies and taking over, and all of a sudden your bees are hot a handful of uh, like 2 months later. So I don't know a ton about it, but I know it happens. That's not really helpful, is it? So, speaking of which, we actually are going to have quite a bit of stuff at our conference about AI, and it's not going to be one of our main speaker focuses, but we're going to have Shabu Raj, who does AI. He's the one working with Gus on the AI and some Russian breeder queens. And then Corey Stevens is going to be there. He does AI. We're also going to have at least one company come in that makes artificial insemination equipment and other things. And so, and there's other beekeepers that do these kind of things as well. So if you're wanting to learn about AI or more details, well, that'll definitely be available at the conference. And it's amazing how many people are getting into it and seemingly doing really well with it. Hey, Patrick, thank you so much for coming on and for asking your questions and for donating to what we're doing. And we will keep churning out good information and bringing good beekeepers to the forefront and doing the best that we can to help grow this industry. We can definitely grow this industry. I'm excited about it. Cayman, did you pick up those boxes I shipped to the incorrect address for the conference? I have not, James. I have not been out that way. It is on my list of things to do, but it just has not been something I've had time to do. He's probably a good hour and 40 minutes for me, I'd say. Um, but I do plan on making it happen. It's on my list of things to do, and but it is for the conference. So you and I need to talk about that. If you're wanting to do something like for the conference, maybe you're not there, but you'll have a deal for the conference that could be shipped. We could do something like that. A lot of different things. All right, East Bernstein, Kentucky's represented. So Caleb says, "Can I still send in a check for the conference?" Technically, that period is over. Everything's PayPal right now. I know Laurel did send some last minute calls to people that had got in on the early bird tickets, and that was supposed to be a check. But if that she just told them, "Hey, get it in quick." So if that's you, go ahead and do that really fast and get that sent in, and we'll still honor that early bird price. But anything from here on out is PayPal. And honestly, we're probably not doing checks again in the future. It worked really good overall, but it just takes so much time. We've probably spent 2 or 3 full days processing checks, and I wanted to do it because it would help say incentivize and save people money to come because it costs us about $7 or $8 in addition to do PayPal. But we just don't have enough staff to handle this. And then there was some lost checks that got lost in the mail. And we've had several people. We probably had like 15 people send in a check that never filled out ticket to get their ticket, and we have no clue who they are. We don't know how to get a hold of them because it doesn't have their phone or their email address, and it's turned into a whole thing. And we don't know they're going to show up to the conference and think they've paid. We can't get a hold of them. We don't know how to. So the checks has kind of created a big issue, and it's not so bad when you have 200 people coming, but with 1,000 almost already signed up, it's starting to be an issue. Is Korhan the Apame founder? He's not. But definitely is majorly involved in the design and distribution in the US. All right. Okay, so James, you're coming. Good deal. Good deal. That's awesome. Well, we've got a lot of Canadians coming to the conference. From what I understand, we've got over 2 dozen coming that I know of, and so there's going to be a lot of Canadians representative represented. And there was a lot that showed up last year that I didn't know that were Canadians that just signed up, and I didn't check. So um, that's exciting. I want to see a lot of Canadians there just because we're basically the closest to each other, and there's a lot of collaboration on information exchange and product exchange. So our industries do a lot together, and I would like to see that grow in the future. It's part of the reason why I've got 3 Canadian speakers at our conference this year. So, and also we want to make sure there's a lot of people coming from Maine, Wisconsin, North Dakota. We don't want to just have southern hot weather beekeepers speaking at the conference either. We want some guys that are good with cold weather information. 3K by 2024, Brian Reese. That is a lot. And you know what? I'm not sure we can quite hit that by 2024, but it is a possibility. I would have told you 2 years ago there was not a snowball's chance, and you know where that was a reality because I was looking at all the competition like the ABF and the APHA and a lot of these other conferences and just seeing what they're doing. I'm like, you know what? There's just not enough demand for that. I disagree with that now. My mind was based on their standards and not mine and what the reality of things really are. And there's a massive amount of people that want to network and learn and to save on product and have that experience. And there's a massive amount of people outside of beekeeping that want to come in and learn how to do it right and fast. And we need to be there to create that opportunity. So we're growing by leaps and bounds, and we will be sure to continue to not forget where we came from as long as I'm alive. Hive Life International. Yes, sir. Okay. All of my hives are bearding very heavily all the time. Is this an indication of something more than too hot? Anything I can do to help them from getting too warm? So, bearding is very normal. They're just trying to get those bodies out of the colony because it is hot. And so, the less bees that are in the colony, the easier it is to get airflow through the colony. And also, the easier it is to cool the colony down because the bees heat up the colony with their bodies. Now, to me, if you're seeing it all throughout the day, that's a sure sign of a dearth. When there's still a flow going on, a lot of times there's very little bearding during the active parts of the day because the bees are out foraging pollen, nectar, water collection, all of those things, propolis. And so there's not a lot of bearding. And then you'll have a lot of bearding in the evenings as they're ripening up the nectar and trying to keep the cluster cool. But if they're bearding throughout the day, that's a sign that tells me it's the dearth, and that's what's going on. What you can do to help cool them down is to add an extra lid on top or give them a little shades in some form or fashion. Help this is where screen bottom boards can sometimes help get some airflow through there, but bearding's very natural, and if they're in a tree cavity there's going to be bearding too. Not all tree cavities are created equal. Insulation does help with this. Well, folks, we are 2 hours and 18 minutes in. I'm going to call it tonight. We'll do another one soon. I just wanted to let you guys know that it's time to monitor those mites, watch those feed levels, get it done. August is a rough time of the year to be a beekeeper. It's hot, it's sweaty. August and September, my opinion, most crucial 2 months of the year for setting up the following year's success. So monitor, get the work done. The conference website is going to start getting more and more new things added. So periodically check back at hivelifeconference.com. And we are excited to hear about anything that you guys want to do at the conference, whether it's show off an invention or a product. We're going to have a major honey show this year, all kinds of cool stuff. It's going to be sweet. Bee pun. We'll see you in the next video. Whew.